This is Doug McCourt, aka Fauxplay, and you are listening to the Liverpool Connection Music and Football Podcast. Keep it locked.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I'm your host Daz. This is my music and football and a lot more episode where I bring on a DJ, producer, musician to talk about music and football and a hell of a lot more. My next guest has been in the electronic music scene for a very long time, but his reincarnation has only been around since I think 2021, but he knows a lot. We're going to get into it. He does like his footy. He hasn't watched it or been up to date with it. He's a Man United fan, and that's probably why. But he's also had loads of records on Music to Die For, on Stripped Digital, and a lot more. He goes by Doug, but right now his moniker is Fauxplay. But welcome to the pod, mate. It's really great to finally, get to meet you face to face and have a good chat.
Cheers, Daz. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I feel like I've got imposter syndrome a little bit because I've seen some of the amazing artists and DJs and producers that you've interviewed over the years, and you've got little old me today, but I'm very grateful to be here.
You're more than welcome. I love your music. That's the biggest compliment I can say, that every single guest I've had on, are a part of my musical journey. And as we were speaking before, there would just be no point in me bringing somebody on that I really know nothing about. I'd be just talking absolute cod shit. And it just wouldn't flow. So every guest I've had on, I listen to their music, I listen to their DJ sets. So, I can't wait to get into it. Let's talk a little bit of football, because I know it'll only be a couple of minutes. Why Man United?
It's a great question. Technically, it should probably be Arsenal, because I was born in North London, pretty close to the Highbury ground, actually, in Islington. So I should really be an Arsenal fan, but I didn't really get into football as a kid, other than playing it. Obviously, I played it a lot, like most kids do, jumpers for goalposts and all that. I got really into football when my family, rather bizarrely, decided to move to Blackpool from London. I think they had this notion that it was going to be a romantic escape to the seaside, and we were all quite shell-shocked when we got there. I mean, the only good thing about Blackpool at the time, this was back in 1990, was there was a bustling music scene there. We'll come back to that. But we used to go clubbing, me and my best mate. He was a massive Man U fan. We used to come back from the nightclubs at, I don't know, 3 a.m. or whatever. I'd stay over at his house because I lived out in the sticks, and he'd put on VHS tapes back in those days of Man U games or Man U centennials or whatever, and I just gradually got into Man U. I lived in the Northwest, and probably was quite impressionable. Got into the whole Manchester scene at the time, so big fan of the Happy Mondays, the Stone Roses, all the usuals you'd expect around that time, and ended up going to Manchester Uni as well for a number of years, which is where I really got into music production as well. But on the footy front, it was just literally my best mate at the time was into them, and followed them for many years, and it was a good time to be into Man U, to be honest, those years. I kind of lost interest when Mr. Ferguson left, and I got busy with other aspects of my life as well. So had a son and so forth. So yeah, I'm a classic Man U glory hunter.
Yeah, you left at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. It's been an absolute shambles since.
Oh man, I mean, as a Liverpool supporter, seeing the undoing of Man United is making my heart warm. It's just a great rivalry, between two great football cities. But seeing United just where they are, especially last season, 15th, just warms the cockles. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, Fergie won everything for United. Obviously, I'm not just a Liverpool supporter, I'm a football supporter, and I do respect, what Fergie did, winning, so many leagues. But the great thing now is all those chanting of 20 leagues is gone, you know. It's quite funny to see online where now United supporters are kind of going, well, you've only won two Premier Leagues, Liverpool. We've won 13. So I'm like, you really going with that? You really gonna go with that now? Is that what you're gonna sing? We've won 13. It's just called banter. As long as it stays banter, because as you know, it's been creeping back in the horrible chanting again, which has no place in football. There's tribalism, obviously, but when it comes to mocking, Heysel, Hillsborough, Munich, that's got to stop. And it's older men too, in their 60s who should know better, and then you've got these, 15 to 20-year-olds that don't really know. They weren't born during those years and are looking up to, Mr. Baldy, which they usually are, and looking up to them and just singing, and they really don't know what they're singing, and it just needs to stop. But we're back on our perch, Liverpool, and I'm very happy with that. And as long as United aren't anywhere near the Champions League or the top four, then it'll be happy days for me. Obviously, music wise for you, I always like to ask my guests, what was playing in your house as a kid, and did your mum and dad's music, influence you at all?
Yes, great question, and it's a definite yes from me. It was really my dad that got me into music. He was a massive jazz fan, actually. He had thousands of jazz vinyl, which he got rid of, quite sadly. Like most of us, get rid of our vinyl eventually. But yeah, he was really into his jazz and classical music, actually. And we used to spend a lot of time when I was a kid going out to pubs to watch jazz bands. So I was always surrounded by music. And he didn't really play, he could play a little bit of piano, but he wasn't very good. He played by ear, but he definitely had a musical ear. And that had a big impression on me, the aspect of music and socializing and, being in smoky bars with, a trombone player or whatever. So massive influence on me. Didn't really have much contemporary music in our house at all. I mean, there was a couple of sort of crap Parade of Pops, dodgy vinyls, probably with a tribute band, wasn't it? Wasn't even the real singer, with some disco tracks on or a bit of Boney M or whatever. So growing up in my sort of pre 10 years old, not really an awful lot of contemporary music. But in some ways that's sort of formed a little bit of my sound later in life, because I've got really into classical music. And I think some of the music today, particularly in the electronica scene, steals from that kind of classical almost concepts, and the way the music's pulled together. It's almost that modern classical music, I think.
Were you a top of the Pops family or no?
Yeah, we me and my sister were into Top of the Pops, and my dad used to go out drinking in the early afternoon, and used to come back and have a snooze, and then wake up about just around 6 o'clock when the news was on, and if we were lucky, we'd get to watch Top of the Pops. It was always Neighbours and Home and Away was on, and he'd always come down the stairs and say, "Turn that crap off," and then we'd watch the news. Then he'd be grumpy because he was a bit hungover, but we'd normally twist his arm to watch Top of the Pops. So yeah, massively into that. It was our little half an hour. Used to get quite excited when it was on. Actually, very fond memories of it. Missed that actually. We watched the rerun sometimes at home.
Yeah, I think pretty much every like English family Thursday night. I think it came on what, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah, seven. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You made your whole like evening. I remember being able to have a shandy. when I was like 13, 14. So I look forward to Thursday nights. And my mum would make cucumber sandwiches. So it was like an event. The whole family would watch. But back in, the 70s and 80s, some of the acts on there were absolutely ridiculous. It was more novelty, then, I mean, remember Combine Harvester?
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
the Birdie song. I
Birdie
mean,
song, Agadoo. Yeah.
it was just ridiculous. But then, maybe at the end or towards the end, you'd find like a good pop band or a rock band that you'd never heard before. I mean, I first saw Thin Lizzy. I was like, "Who? What is this? I like it," then you go from that to obviously like Depeche Mode or Erasure. And so like with your sister, is she younger or older? Did she
Younger.
younger? So
Yeah, yeah.
you, you had more influence music wise on her?
We actually had quite different tastes. So in my sort of around the time of early teens, to what you basically said there, I didn't really like most of the stuff actually that was on top of the pops. Maybe 10% of it I liked. The rest of it, like you say, I cringed at. And I got into more 70s music really. I preferred the previous decades. So I got into, I don't know, Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and rock bands basically. And then I thought anything with a sequencer or a drum machine was rubbish. I didn't like any of that music at all in my early teens. Whereas my sister was the complete opposite. She liked pop and what I would call pop, but actually liked a lot of the 80s bands that at the time I didn't like, but now I really like. So actually, I didn't like Depeche Mode at the time. I thought they were crap, but now I think they're amazing. I think they got better actually, Depeche Mode over time as well. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, during the 80s, I didn't like the 80s music. It was only towards the end of the 80s I started really liking some of the more mainstream stuff and started to get into dance music. And I got into dance music through my sister. She was playing much more dance music than I was.
Oh wow, yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, my dad's a rocker. My mum was like soul, and then my sister was pop. So, I had like the perfect triangle in my house. And I take little bits from all three of them. But yeah, my sister, had all the 45s and would just, play them over and over again with her friends. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I didn't like the 80s fashion. I mean, I'm an 80s casual, but like the neon colors of the 80s was just absolutely disgusting to me. It just made me vomit the whole like Wham stuff. But then it's weird, Doug, because now I like Wham. I've said it there. I've said it. I put, I mean, because they
You're going to
wrote,
get complaints about that now, Daz. We're
yeah,
talking about the complaints.
somebody will write in and go, I can't believe you're a Wham fan. But, I mean, they wrote good pop songs, it is what it is. I didn't like the whole choose life t-shirts and, Frankie Goes to Hollywood relax t-shirts. I wasn't into any of that, but, I like the music. But like you said, though, I think as we get older, we start to go back, especially classical. I never liked classical when I was young, but now I really, really appreciate it because, like you said too, electronic music does kind of steal from classical. It's especially prog, especially ambient. It's all in there. Did you learn any instrument as a kid?
Yeah, so the first instrument I learned to play was the flute actually when I was very young, probably about 9 years old. And I remember this woman came round to our school and basically turned up and said, "Does anyone want to learn a music instrument? Hands up." My best buddy put his hands up. So, all right, I'll do that as well. Then I'm into that. And he said flute, and I said, "All right, I'll do flute." And actually, I kind of regretted it because I think that I had the option of saxophone or clarinet, and I think I probably would have gone for one of those if I'd had my time again. Although subsequently I did learn to play them because they're actually very similar fingering to the flute. But so I learned the flute. That was my first instrument, and then my sister got a guitar. She got a Spanish guitar, but she didn't really stick with it. She played, played it for 6 months, then just left it there. So I ended up taking that off her and starting to copy stuff, playing vinyls and stopping it and trying to learn things and started getting into playing guitar. And then I got an electric guitar, and then I started playing in bands. So I was in quite a few bands in my formative years. I was in a punk band when I was about 13, 14. Yeah, that guitar was my main instrument for many, many years. And then later I started getting into keyboards and things, but that was much later. That was more sort of 16, 17 years old, because I wasn't really into keyboards and I wasn't really into drum machines. I was just a purist. In fact, if anything, I sneered at any kind of electronic music. I just thought it was fake. And we're talking about bands that I didn't like at the time. I hated Pet Shop Boys. I hated Erasure. I hated Communards. I hated all of those bands. Love them all now. I think they're amazing. And you listen back to it and you think that, the production and the use of the programming, and it's because I know more about how hard it is to create that sound now, and how good the engineering and the production was back in those days, and the songwriting. So yeah, it was a long-winded answer.
Yeah, I had my dad had guitars, and instead of playing them, I painted them. Uh, yeah, he wasn't too happy. He had a Gibson, and he had all his guitars in the garage, and I just didn't like. I mean, this is like, I think I was like 7 or 8, and I just didn't like the way this Gibson, the color was. So I
Wow.
took primer, white primer, and I painted his whole guitar. And let me tell you, back in the day when you could spank your kids, he walloped me like pretty bad. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's one of the one of the not so very good things I've done in my life was to destroy his Gibbs. I mean, once I painted it, that's it. It's done. You know.
Nightmare. You meant well though. It's almost quite sad that he smacked you, because you obviously meant well. You were probably quite proud of it as well, but I can imagine the look on his face.
Well, there was that, and then putting a football through the back window. So yeah, all that in one day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I probably deserved it. A nice smack on the bottom. But yeah, I mean, the guitar for me was, again, growing up in a household that's, my dad's a rocker, Deep Purple, he's a brummie. So Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, a bit of 10cc. Status quo, got to have status quo, the cheese on toast, but rocking all over the world. But yeah, guitar was something that I always wanted to learn, but I just couldn't grasp it. you
Mm.
know it's just one of those. But I think once you learn an instrument, you can pretty much start to play, basically anything. I mean, that's why I was a massive fan of Prince, because he could play. You give him an instrument, he'll learn it in a day. You know,
Yeah.
and for you, like, obviously guitar and the flute, as long as it's not a recorder. I think every English school kid has all tried playing recorder at least once. But when did the kind of the drum machines and the drums start coming into your life?
Um, so so yeah, I'm obsessive about guitar for years. I went to uni. Really, it was university, really. I mean, I had a mate who had a keyboard, and we were in a band in sixth form, and I'd often go around his after school, and he had a little 4-track recorder and a synth. I can't remember what synth it was, but we just play on that and try and create tracks for hours and hours and hours, and the time would just, when you're in the flow and you're enjoying yourself, you lose track of time. And I guess that was probably when I thought to myself, um, I really enjoy doing this. There's something really magical about losing yourself in creating, the blank canvas of possibility. So that was kind of in sort of sixth form, 16, 17. But yeah, I mean, I got into production and drum machines and everything else at 18, 19 when I went to university. And at the beginning of my second year in Manchester University, just before that actually, um, I went started going clubbing to dance music events, if you like, raves, um, and I had one particular summer where I went to a rave, and I was pretty blown away by it. And then I came to Manchester, and the scene in Manchester was amazing around that time. I mean, I went to the Hacienda once, about 89, um, but um, but then being at university there, you could go there all the time. So I remember going to the Hacienda with some mates, and then we left there and went on to this after club. I met this girl. She took me to this club um, called the Banshee, which was an all-nighter. It was on till like 7 or 8 in the morning, and there was DJs called the Mix Factory used to DJ there. Um, and I met Simon Noble, who ended up being my best mate, and he was one half of Breeder. He wasn't anything to do with Breeder back then, of course. He was a sound engineer in a place called Spirit Studios in Manchester, and we just ended up at this party afterwards. In fact, I met his girlfriend first at the fag machine back in those days. And I thought I'd pulled. She grabbed hold of my hand. She was dragging me across the dance floor, and I thought, wow, she's all right. This is I can get used to this. And then she introduced me to her boyfriend, that was Simon Noble, this big grinning guy dancing with no top on a speaker, and we ended up hitting it off. And that evening, or that morning, in fact, we got guitars out. I started playing guitar. There was a few people on bongos. We just started having a jam, and he said, "You're pretty good, actually. Do you fancy coming to the studio?" So we went to bed, and the next day we went to his studio, or not his studio. He was an engineer in a proper studio with a big Einstein desk. I mean, I've never worked in a studio as good as that one. It was a proper pro setup. And he knew how to use everything. He was a proper, recording engineer, sound engineer, and we did a track together called "Feel the Juice." It never got released. We did about 150 versions of it, but it was good. And I remember we knew some people from a band called Two for Joy, Phil Beckett and Mark. Is it Mark Hall? Yeah, Mark Hall and Phil Beckett. And I remember them saying about a year or two later, or maybe a bit later than that, if you'd have released "Feel the Juice" at the time, you'd be as big as Moby now. And this was a few years later after we hadn't released it. But yeah, anyway, so that's how I got really into drum machines, keyboards, production through Simon Noble, and he kind of he fired up this passion in me for creating music, and digital music. Well, at the time it was Atari STs and Akai S950 samplers. I mean, it was all hardware and Atari STs back in those days, and Cubase. But yeah, that's how it all started.
How is it that always at an after party, somebody brings bongos? Like they're not there when you get them, but then somebody will walk in the room with some bongos. It's happened all the time to me as well. And you're just like, where did the bongos just come from? Always. But like for you, it was more. I'm trying to like think how to really say this. Like, when I first like heard Acid House, it was something that just grabbed me, and I knew it was going to be with me probably for the rest of my life. And I know some people will be like, ah, you're talking chatting, shite. But it just did. It was the whole, not just the music, but the collective. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, that was a magical time. You're going back to the early 90s. I mean, there's a lot of old gits like me that go on about it all the time, and sometimes you'll see an old track on YouTube, and you'll look at the comment section, and everybody feels the same. Anyone from that era. I mean, for me, the golden era was 1990 to 1993 for me. For some, it was a bit later. But yeah, I mean, I felt like I'd stumbled upon almost a cultural revolution. It was like everybody was, everybody wanted to be friends with everybody. It was just this warm feeling. The music was amazing. I mean, I used to. Someone found an old photo of me from back in those days recently, and I was wearing a sweatshirt and a hat, and I was absolutely drenched in sweat because I would dance non-stop from whatever, for 6 hours in a row, buzzing, meeting, just being. I'd often walk out of the club with completely different people that I walked in with, and they'd be my new mates. It was that amazing. And actually, sort of going back to the football connection. I went to bit of a segue. I went to a virtual reality show in London recently, run by Darren Emerson, and it was you basically it was about the beginning of the warehouse raves, and you put your kind of virtual headset on, and it takes you through the story of it. It's actually really good and actually very emotional because there's a bit in it when you're in a warehouse rave. I think they're playing Chime by Orbital, and you feel like you're on it's Energy Flash, but you're in there amongst the crowd, and it made me feel quite emotional, kind of like it transported me back to that feeling of where I was back in 1991 in a club, and the connection you had with everybody that just doesn't exist anymore. It's just not the same. People with phones, you're never gonna get that feeling, and the football connection was the evolution of the warehouse raves came from football fans. Actually, they kind of started it off in when they were doing the raves, and they'd be chanting each other, fighting maybe during the day or watching the match, and then they'd be best mates in the evening, and it kind of changed the football scene as well, and the way that fans interacted with each other and took the hooliganism out, which is amazing. It kind of broke down barriers, and yeah, it'll never be the same. And the music was it just used to make me so excited. It still does, but I mean, I used to jump around like a lunatic back then. I liked my hardcore breaks back in those days. My first vinyl record was a rave record, if you like, was Too Bad Mice Bomb Scare, and it still stands up to this day. Still play it, and it'll get people pogoing around, even people who've never heard it before. Kids listen to it, go, "Oh, this is wicked." So yeah.
Yeah, the production on Bomb Scare was absolutely amazing. I mean, I just I mean, it's been a couple of months, but Framework had done a rework of it, and that's spot on as well. But there's nothing like the original, and uh, one of one of them is a Liverpool supporter as well. Is it Sai? I
I'm not
think
sure.
the Liverpool supporter, which again in my books puts it way way up there. But no, I mean it's you know it does take you back to a day where you didn't really care what you wore and you were there to dance, and because it's in it that it's called dance music for a reason, not phone music. You go there to sweat, to have a good time, and like you said, many times you go with a bunch of mates and you'd lose them, you know, for whatever reason. They go off, talk to some other people, and you'd just make new mates. and you go to the after party. But it was that whole community that I just loved, and it was like carefree. You didn't worry about anything back then. But it was also, I think, if you're into your vinyl, the community of going to your local record shop and having a relationship with, the seller. For me, it was Three Beat and Eastern Bloc in Manchester. And I became friends, with the lads behind the counter. So every time I'd walk in there, they'd have a stack of records. But it was a meeting spot. And that's one of the biggest things I miss now, because, we get on the computer and we can get a record on Beatport or, Juno, wherever you get stuff from. And it's soulless. It's just soulless, because all you do is click, download, and you're not talking to anyone. And I think that's the biggest thing I miss, is the communication, having a meeting point where you would meet your mates, but also meet, everyone else in the record shop, even though they'd be like, all right, Daz, you've been here for 5 hours and you've bought nothing, you know. They'd always have a go at me. But, I was searching for that one record,
Yeah.
And it would probably be on a B-side and it would take me hours. But I missed that. I do end up sounding like that old fart on these podcasts. Like, back in my day, it was better. I'm not going to say it was better. I'm just going to say in my day, like, I think it was a bit purer because it was new. And I mean, I don't want to, like, it's the kids' time at the moment, Obviously we live in a social media world. So, they want to capture everything on a phone. It drives me crazy, but that's the world we live in, and it's just, I look back and I know which era I would pick every day out of the week. I just would. It was more pure. It was more organic to me. I know you're pretty much in the same boat, I would think.
Yeah, totally. I think, I feel privileged to have lived through that period. I remember sort of around that time, maybe just before that time, thinking, I wish I'd lived in this, in the 70s or the 60s. What a great time to be alive that would have been, because it was a bit shit in the 80s, I think. And then the 90s came along, and actually looking back at it now, I can say I think the 90s was even better. There was, in terms of a musical and sort of cultural revolution, there's nothing that compares to it since then, I don't think. If you look at the evolution of music, and disco and punk and whatever, through to where we are now, nothing since has really kind of shaken things up as much as I think the dance music scene did at the time. And even now, I mean, you can listen, but the music hasn't evolved a huge amount, really. It's kind of gone off in lots of little fragments. But you can play tracks from 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020 in a set now, drop them in every now and again, and some people don't know, they don't notice. I heard someone play, it was Instagram the other day, someone, I think it was John Digweed, was playing someone I know quite well and have worked with before, Luke Brancaccio and Bruce Asher's Lovely Day, dropped it in a set. I think that's from about 2010 or something. I can't remember when it first came out. Might be before then, actually, 2007 or something. But yeah, loads of people thought it was a remix or that it was a new track, and it had just been slowed right down. And Luke was like, no, it's just this original. It's just it's just been slowed down a bit. But yeah, an amazing time to be alive. And but the flip of that, to go back to your point around the kids today, is there is a lot of good music out there. People complain and say, it's all shit and all the rest of it. It's not all shit. There's a lot of shit stuff at the top, as in the really, the stuff that's getting millions and millions and millions of plays pushed by the big record labels. But if you dig around, there's some amazing stuff out there. I can't think of a time when there's been more creativity, in the scene across the board. There's so many genres. There's so many, things that you can find. I do, if I'm honest, and shoot me down in flames, I do find Beatport quite frustrating as a channel to market. I don't like the way that they curate things. Whenever I do stuff, I struggle to find which niche to fit it in. It's like it's not really progressive. It's not really deep house. It's not. Is it electronica? Well, it could be. So I find that quite frustrating. And by the way, my mates, who I sometimes nag to buy a track of mine every now and again, hate it. Well, it's the worst experience from the perspective of a platform to buy music, that you beggars belief really that they don't get this right. But anyway, we're segueing there. But from a kid's perspective now, yeah, they've got more at their fingertips music wise, and so easily accessible. You don't have to go to a record shop. I mean, I hear what you're saying, the community aspects of it and the excitement of sifting through boxes and, oh, what's this? I'll have a listen to that. And getting a gem and having a DJ set. I mean, you were probably more of a DJ than I was. I used to DJ at parties, but having a unique set of tracks compared to now, unless you're on a few promo lists and you know some people, everyone plays the same stuff. The Beatport Top 100. So yeah, pros and cons.
Well, I mean, when I would buy vinyl, I would run home with it. Excited to put it on the decks. And now, like, I'll buy from Beatport or whatever, and I don't immediately get on the decks like I would if I bought vinyl. Because the whole vinyl package to me, I've said it so many times on this podcast, the smell of brand new vinyl, there is nothing like it. I know some people might like message me now, go, what a proper weirdo you are. But there isn't, to get the plastic off.
Yeah.
And then I would read everything that's on that vinyl, and it's the artwork as well, that's just, again, just missing from Beatport. But like Beatport in its earlier days, it's based out of Denver. It was a couple of lads that started it. The way they started it was very good, but because there's so many like these different genres of, I mean, a lot of breaks are in electronica now,
Yeah.
vice versa. And then you'll listen to prog house, it doesn't sound like prog house, and then melodic techno is progressive house with a bit more oomph, and then techno is not techno anymore. It's like gabba. It's just you lose yourself in a rabbit hole. But I mean, like you alluded to, if you are starting out, don't look at the top 10 at Beatport top 100. Dig, keep digging. It might take you a few hours, but keep digging. And that's what I hope. Like over here, the EDM scene, these massive festivals, EDC. I hope 5% of the people that actually go start to go, I've had enough of this mainstream stuff. I want to dig for something underground, and then they start going to underground clubs, because that's the heart and soul of this scene, is the underground clubs. Obviously in the UK, every other week a club's closing because these kids would rather spend, 150, 200 quid to go to a festival that has 30 DJs, instead of going and seeing their local resident DJ who has a guest every now and again. And that's the heart and soul of this music scene, is the local resident DJ who busts his backside, 4-5 nights a week to put on, a good party and bring in a guest. And it's I appreciate when I see like local DJs. I mean, like Danny Howells to me is probably one of the best warm up DJs, like before he started to get bigger. I mean, he always, opened up for Digweed, Sasha, Nick Warren, and just going from like 90 beats per minute to, 130 and flawlessly. I actually just listened to Dave Seaman and Anthony Pappa live from Stereo, and they did exactly the same. They went from pretty much ambient music at the start to, playing bangers. And that's the way it should be. I think a lot of the kids these days, they look at the top 10 on Beatport, they buy it, and then at 9 o'clock at night, if they get a gig, they play that top 10, and it's nothing but bangers. And, they don't quite understand. Like, I mean, if I walked into a club and they were playing bangers at 9 p.m. at night, I'd probably walk straight back out, or at least to the bar to get something to drink, because you've got to kind of glide onto the dance floor. I've learned that actually from like YMCA discos. How the DJ kind of would make sure he played a girly track, so the girls start, and then the boys would be like, "Oh, all right, the girls are on the floor, so I better start, doing me moves." I feel it's just like that, but it's how to work a crowd, and I think it's kind of lost in some of the kids these days. It's just banger after banger.
Yeah, you want a bit of Wonderful Tonight at the end of the night, maybe a bit of Krista Berg, erection section. No, you're spot on. And actually, I'm primarily a producer. I DJ a bit. I do parties and bits and pieces. But over the years, so my favorite DJ going back, well, my favorite prog DJ was always been Sasha, and was always blown away by the seamlessness. The couldn't tell when one track was finishing and another was starting. The way that and this is vinyl. I mean, it's not there's no key sync. This is perfection. And an hour or 90 minutes or whatever. There was the Northern Exposures. Everyone, that's always rated as one of the best ever mixes. Him and Diggers, and the Sasha San Francisco, I think, was a good one as well. But some of the Global Undergrounds. But I always, when I was DJing, I always wanted to try and make it as good as that. So I'd spend hours and hours and hours trying to find the next record that would go with that one to make a perfect transition, and spent more time worrying about the transition between the tracks than the bigger journey. And I think that's when you kind of graduate as a DJ, when you either can literally in the moment go, right, this is the right tune for now, and lots of DJs don't do that, or you can do that bigger picture thing, and you're focusing on the energy rather than just the music. And as a producer, you see, I can get tracks to sound amazing together, but that doesn't mean the journey's right. The energy might go up and down, and suddenly, even though it's an amazing piece of music that follows another piece of music, you've lost the floor. Everyone on the dance floor is like, it's kind of like, it's nice, but I'll go and get a drink now. And that's where the superstars, the people like the Pappas and the Seamans and these guys, they know how to craft a journey. And that's what I love about those big DJs. The long DJ sets, 3 hours, 4 hours. You can't get it in an hour as well. That's the problem. Everybody's forced to do an hour, or if you're lucky, 2 hours. You just you want 3-4 hours of a DJ to let them get into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, Sasha to me is just the pinnacle. And I think when I was younger, I'd try and get every record that he was playing, and I'd come back and I'd try to redo what I just heard, and not even close. He's just got one of those ears. And he's probably insured both of those ears for millions. But he's still got it. I mean, you look and it's the same DJs that have been around for 30 odd years.
Mm.
Diggers, your Nick Warrens, your Hernans, and Sasha's. They're there for a reason because they keep pushing the music, you know. And when you think, like Sasha's just going down, just the prog, he comes out with the breaks stuff, and you're just like, wow, it's the same production quality, but it's different. I mean the whole Involver series, took me a little while to get into it because it was more a lot of vocals, which I'm not so big on in dance music, but the production on it was just absolutely spot on. And I've talked to Barry Jameson, who's a good mate now. He's been in there and he's done that Duncan Forbes as well, and just to listen to them just say how good Sasha is, like in the studio, he knows what he wants, and obviously Charlie May, another one. But yeah, there's something about, like, I mean, I can say Sasha's my favorite DJ. He just is. And I know the long journey people say is cliched, but I do want a DJ to take me on some kind of journey, from A to Z, like the highs, the lows, the troughs. That's what I want. I don't want, just one line. And I just feel like, I listen to music every day, and not just dance music, because if I listened to dance music every day, I would go insane. Um, but I am one that I like to try and listen to, new stuff. But some of the newer DJs, just it's that.
Mm.
It's just one line, and I'm like, people on the dance floor need a break every now and again. I mean, you see this 160 like techno stuff where it's just, I'm old. I can't do that.
Well, they need a break to put their arms down every now and again from holding the phone up, don't they? It must be
Yeah.
knackering.
But plus, I don't look good in black or leather, so I can't do that. But yeah, it's something that I can't get into. Is I mean, I love my drum and bass, so
Yeah.
obviously, like 160, 170 beats per, but it's just the banging of the hardcore techno that I have to have something with soul in it, and
Yeah.
that kind of techno is soulless. And I read an interview with Juan Atkins the other day, and he was like, "Where's the soul gone in this techno?" And I agree 100%. And
Yeah.
sounding like an old fart, that's just going, where has the soul gone? I mean, it's still getting produced, but what's good now for the record companies is this 160
Mm.
banging techno, because it's selling, and that's all these people care about, the A&R people and the money people, which is the men in business suits, and that's why I think I appreciate more buying from an independent label than I would, one of
Mm.
these major labels, because they're all about money, and that's sad to me, because I know you, me, and a whole load, most of my guests didn't get into this electronic music scene to make money.
Mm.
We got in it because we love it, heart and soul, sweat, blood, everything.
Well, you kind of, I mean, these days you haven't really got a choice. There's no money in it anyway. 20 years ago, you wanted to make money in dance music, you get a bunch of white labels pressed and literally flog them around the record shops and sell them at 10 quid a pop, and you can make a mint doing it that way. These days, you can have 100,000 streams or whatever on Spotify, and that's a pretty successful track, and earn 50 quid or something, or it's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean the industry's screwed really, from that perspective. So therefore, you do have, it is a labor of love. It's, you do it because you have to do it. It's a calling. Personally, I have to do it. It's not that I'm trying to make money doing it. Uh, because I'm not, but I don't know what else I do, and it's my escape. It's what I do to unwind, but also what I do to get excited at the same time. So it's a bit of a weird one in that regards. But yeah, I agree with you on the 160 BPM stuff and the kind of relentless bang, bang, bang. I mean, when I go to festivals, what I like about a festival, actually, I can't remember whether the festival's still on, but I remember going to a festival some years back and dipping between the different sounds. See, like you're in I can listen to drum and bass for maybe 45 minutes of absolutely banging, and then I'm like, all right, I fancy a break now. I'm going to go and check something else out. So I find the really high energy banging stuff. Um, I like it, but I find it gets a bit relentless. And I have to kind of have a break to let my kind of brain calm down. Whereas prog or deeper stuff or electronica or breaks or whatever, I can listen to that for hours and hours and hours and enjoy the journey. So yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, it's just one of the. I think basically, Doug, we're just getting old.
Yeah, pretty much.
We might,
Not even getting old. That's let's talk in the present tense. Are old.
are old. Yeah. Uh, I end up like on these podcasts sounding like the old man on a rocking chair,
Yeah.
telling people to get off their grass. Yeah, every single time. I try not to go down that route. There, I end up doing it. But I'm just glad we lived through a great time. I mean, again, especially the northwest of England. Maggie Thatcher just wanted to destroy Liverpool, and we wouldn't let her. So we've been through hard times, and I think the dance music scene really helped me get out of that funk, because everybody was just down and out. And I think, the rave scene kind of picked everyone up. I mean, Quadrant Park was just absolutely insane. You know, I went to the tail end of that and I was just like, again, give me more. And then obviously Cream happened. And, that blew me out the water because I got to see, world-class DJs in my back garden, basically. So that was really good. But yeah, for you, production wise, obviously, you're saying working with Simon, who is an absolute legend. I mean, Breeder to me, again, just put out music that was, it did something more than what the regular prog was doing. I mean, I'm a big fan of Shem Slacker, God rest his soul. But Breeder was dirtier, like the bass lines, and I know we've talked about, off air, back and forth with messaging, Breeder. With Simon, did any production like help for you? Did you just were you like the T lad, in the studio just watching him do the Midas touch?
Kind of, but slightly more irritating because I wanted to get my hands on the controls and I wanted to be doing stuff. I always saw myself as I was probably more musical traditionally than Simon was. Simon came from a pure sound engineering background, a very gifted musician as well. But I saw myself more a performer, if you like. I pick up the guitar. I've got some chords ideas. I do this. I do that. But he could noodle around on a piece of hardware for hours, and I wouldn't have a Scooby Doo what he was doing, and I actually find it quite frustrating. I'd be like, can we just? He'd be, I don't know, EQing a kick drum for like half an hour or something. Proper perfectionist. I mean, yeah, I learned huge amounts from Simon, and was equal parts enjoyable and frustrating. Simon is an absolute perfectionist. He's not the kind of person that would release anything unless it was going to be an absolute banger. And I don't mean good, I mean the best. And which is what he did with his breeder stuff. But it was interesting when I remember. So Simon and I pretty much. I was his collaborator for me. I mean, he used to do lots of stuff with people. Worked with DJ Welly, with Void. I don't even remember Void, going way back there, and did stuff with Two for Joy and Awesome 3, Don't Go. That's a big old classic tune. He engineered that. I mean, he had a roster of big tracks under his belt, and actually he got in the studio with Rowan. I went traveling. I went to Australia in about '96, and I wasn't. I mean, the progressive scene was kind of emerging, or it started to emerge. I think probably a couple of years before. I remember seeing Sasha at a New Year's Eve party at Oscar Wilde's mansion and somewhere in Nottinghamshire. It was a Renaissance New Year's gig, I think, and he played that De Niro helicopter track. I don't even remember that one. But his set was completely different. The Sasha I was used to was playing pianos, and I was like, "What's going on with Sasha? I'm not sure I get it." And I went away traveling, and I came back, and I remember I met with Simon back in about '97, and he played me The Chain and Twilight Thunder. I didn't really like them at first. We have a bit of a running joke about it. I remember listening. Not that I didn't like them. I wasn't blown away by them until I heard them in a club. And I was like, oh my God, wow, this is absolutely rocking. Going to your point around the fatness of things, Simon's a purist in that everything's analog. Actually, he ended up evolving to a high-end Pro Tools HD rig in the end, but which he still swears by. But he's a purist. Everything's got to be analog. He's gets right into the weeds of programming synths and drum machines, and he really knows his stuff, and he knows engineering. He talks about concepts that fly over my head, psychoacoustics and this and that, and I wouldn't say we have arguments about stuff. We agree to disagree about stuff sometimes. He's got his own sort of set way, but I learned huge amounts from him: how to arrange, how to mix, how to do most things, and we didn't do many tracks together in the end. We did a few. In the sort of early mid '90s, yeah, I mean, when he met Rowan, things really took off in a big way, and Rowan was the businessman. He was the person that kind of took this skill, this art that Simon was amazing at, and took it to the next level. Took it to Sasha. It wouldn't have even got in the Twilight Thunder and The Chain wouldn't have even got into Sasha's hands if it wasn't for Rowan, because Rowan was the one that wanted to get it into Sasha. In fact, I think it went to Diggers first, and Sasha heard it. I seem to recall that was the story, and went, "What the hell's this?" And that's kind of all sort of blew up from there. So
just amazing music. It took prog to a whole new level. Not just the music, but the production level. Because, obviously early prog guerrilla records is what got me into prog as well. But, prog at that time was starting to sound all a little bit samey. And then Breeder came along and just kicked it up its arse. And it was a much heavier sound.
Well, they didn't. So the thing about interestingly, it's different. It's changed now, but Simon never really listened to much of other people's music. he was such a purist. He felt that by listening to other people's music, it would pollute his thinking and pollute his creativity. He just wanted to express himself, which I think, is a lesson for producers out there that try to sound like other people. They try to fit in. They listen to a label and go, I want to write something that's going to fit on that label, which, is a good strategy if you want to get signed by a label, but it's not a good strategy if you want to do something out of this world and completely different. And I think, those first few tunes he did with Rowan were actually supposed to be a remix of a track he did a couple of years earlier, called "Make It Funky" by Rebounds, which was, I think he did it with Welly. It was the DJ from Wigan Pier, DJ Welly. And Rowan really liked that track, and Sasha caned it. And that was a very early progressive track, actually. I think it was about 94. I can't remember. But yeah, that's how the chains. I think it was either the chain was, yeah. I think the chain came before Twilight Thunder. They were released at the same time, but as a track, and it was a remix of Make It Funky, and then it took on a bit of a sort of harder, faster angle, and then yeah, there you go. The rest is history.
Yeah, I love that. Like not listening to other stuff, and I think that's a great way to go about things because you know as we were talking about James Hype, there's so many kids out there that trying to emulate what James is doing. The button presser, as I call him. You know, but
He's not. He's not going. He's not going to be coming on the show now.
no,
After
no, no. Oh well, sucks for him then. But it's just be your own self.
Mm.
That's what I would say. I mean, especially with the technology we have now, you can obviously produce in your bedroom, and there's so many bedroom DJs out there, and you can tell when you listen to, because you can self-promote, and put it out on Beatport, you can definitely tell that they have no engineering skill or mastering skill because the levels are off. It might sound good if an engineer got a hold of it mastering, but when I hear a lot of the stuff on Beatport, it's just not up to par. So I've always said like the breeder records are what you want to aspire to production wise. That's how you want a record to sound. Whether it's drum or bass, electronica, breaks, the production level that's the height of it. So, but yeah, I mean, I definitely want to talk to you about Fauxplay. I love your stuff because it's in that little breaks and prog, and I've always loved progressive breaks. I mean, hybrid to me, again, their production level, Mike's and Lottie up there as well. But what is great, and we go back to the classical thing, I think with hybrid. I mean, their first album, they used the Russian orchestra. That's a ballsy move for your first album to use. Finnish Symphony for me is, it's an absolute classic. So when were you reinventing yourself with Fauxplay, or how is the story on that? Because again, you've been in the music scene for a long time, but Fauxplay did not come around till COVID times, right? Or before?
But well, funnily enough, it came about before COVID. I actually moved to South Africa for a while. I got away from the UK, went to live in South Africa, and I rebuilt my studio out there. I had a really big space there, much bigger than where I am now. And I decided I was really going to invest in my studio, get it kitted out nicely, and just really take it a bit more seriously. I mean, I've already the difference between me and say a Simon is I've dipped in and dipped out of music from a production perspective. You know, it's always been a sideline, whereas Simon was, you know, fully focused on it. And you know, and many others of your guests as well. But I decided to take it a little bit more seriously back then, and invest in myself, and started to really focus on trying to get my sound, trying to work out what my sound was. And actually, to your point, or to the point we were just covering about sort of expressing yourself and not wanting to sound like other people. My approach typically when I go into the studio, and has been since back then, is whatever mood I'm in. You know, sometimes I'm in the mood to do some breaks. I might have heard something earlier in the day or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I want to go and do some breaks now. Other times I want to do progressive. Other times I want to do deep house, which might be a bit frustrating for the fans, because they might not know what to expect next. One minute they're like thinking, oh, this guy's a progressive breaks producer, and then next minute I'm doing some techno. But I don't really care, to be honest. I'm enjoying myself, and fortunately, that Music to Die For is a label, and Johnny, the head honcho there, is his philosophy is he doesn't really care. He just wants to get good electronic music out there. Normally, it's got an emotional kind of angle to it in some way, shape, or form, and most of my music does. So, you know, it's a great stable. I mean, I've been releasing music. Music to Die For has been around for quite a while, actually. But again, similarly, Music to Die For has only really taken off probably since COVID. But I mean, I was releasing tracks with Johnny on Music to Die For as early as, I think, 2003, 2004. And the different names. Idiotech was one of my monikers back then. Assassins, Kenzo, did loads of different monikers that were sort of secret squirrel tracks that did pretty well on the underground. But vinyl, still got them downstairs. And yeah, a long-winded way of answering your question. The short version of it is I just really started investing in myself, and I thought the Fauxplay moniker was an opportunity to, I don't know, take it a little bit more seriously. Like I was a fresh, brand new artist. I have been around the block, but some people don't know that. They're like, well, this is Fauxplay guys just turned up on the scene. So that's the answer.
Well, now people know, you know, who. Oh, so that's good. But you know, like, how do you feel? Because you know, I noticed. Well, I have the tracks with Ranj, Kayla, and now Anthony Pappa, which is a biggie. You know, I didn't know until I spoke to Anthony the other day. I had him on as a guest, and it's such a nice
The
person.
top bloke. Yeah, yeah.
And he knows his stuff. He's the DJ's DJ. You know? But when he said, he's like, yeah, I'll be working with Doug, and it just rang a bell, and I was like, Doug McCourt. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, it's like, no way, wow. I mean, that's that was really cool to hear. So how did that come about with Anthony?
It came about through Johnny. So Johnny Hudson knows. He's very well connected. He's good mates with Anthony, and a whole bunch of people in the scene, if you like. So he does a lot of stuff with Dave Seaman, who regularly goes back to back with Mr. Pappa every now and again. So it's really through Johnny, and Johnny sort of match made us, if you like, because I think Anthony hasn't released anything for a while. He's obviously an incredibly gifted DJ, and I totally agree with you on two fronts. He is the DJ's DJ. He's absolutely awesome and very understated, and a very humble, just a good bloke. I really, very supportive towards me, and just easy to get on with. So yeah, no, we were connected that way. Funnily enough, we we pretty much finished an EP, I don't know, about 9 months ago. Unfortunately, though, my laptop got stolen. And I had I mean, I lost a lot of stuff actually. Simon and I refer to it as stuff that's gone to music heaven, because I must have had, I don't know, a couple of hundred unfinished tracks on there, and great ideas and all the rest of it. And some stupid reason I didn't manage to activate the Find My, because it's a Mac, the Find My Mac service. For some reason it was never working, and I hadn't realized until I tried to find it. And I decided, because I've got my studio up here, and I normally have a Mac tower. I've got one actually sat underneath me, but I decided I like the idea of being able to produce on the move and kind of put little ideas down and then take it up to the studio and finish it off. And this one time I decided to take my laptop into town, and I actually don't know what happened. I think it got nicked in a pub or something. But anyway, so I lost an EP of stuff. There was one track we salvaged called Waterfall, which features on his balance mix, which quite a few people have contacted me on and said, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? And we're just about to finish the B-side to that, which will go out as a separate package. But we've just actually concluded yesterday. Johnny's got to sign it off, but Pappa's quite excited about it. A release that's coming out on Music to Die For, and it's a collab also with Leo Wood, the singer. And I came across Leo first when I heard the track Blue by Marsh, which I just absolutely love it. It's a hair stand on end track for me. So I knew that Johnny knew Leo, because they'd had this Ewan Hughes Army project with Dave Seaman, Quiver, and Leo, there's a track Voice Recognition you might have heard of, which has been smashing it. So I knew there was a connection to Leo, and Pappa and I did this track together remotely because he's in Melbourne, so it's not an easy. I'm here in Kent. We got to work out a way of working with each other, but we've nailed it. And we did this track, which we really liked, and he sent it to Dave Seaman, and Dave said it's wicked, but it could do with a little vocal in it, maybe. I was thinking about using AI, maybe. I was going to give it a try. Still, I listened to a few AI software vocals, and I think I could probably get something half decent out of it. I still don't think the tech's quite there. But I thought I'd ask Johnny whether or not he could connect with Leo, and he did. And that was a bit of a dream come true. She said, I'll give it a go, sent us a vocal. Took a bit of teasing out of her. She's just had a baby, so she's quite busy being a mum. And yeah, we nailed it in literally last night. Sent it to Pappa, and he sent me a message this morning saying, absolutely love this. So yeah, that'll be coming out soon. And yeah, I mean, I'm a bit starstruck, to be honest. It's amazing working with such a star, and Leo as well. So I'm quite excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Like I said, when he told me Doug, out of all the dogs in the world, it was weird because I was like, Fauxplay? He's like, yeah, how did you know? I was like, I've been chatting with him. And he's like, wow, small world. So, yeah, I mean, Pappa, oh, I mean, it was a pinch me moment. All these podcasts, all yourself included, all my guests are pinch me moments for me, because you're all a part of my musical journey. So, it really is great to hear these stories. It's great to hear that yourself and Pappa, putting out music together. I mean, that's a match made in heaven, But I want to go back to the somebody thieving your computer. I hope there's no one out there putting your stuff out, because you hear of that, You know, I mean, there was a lad on Beatport that got called out for it. You know, for putting stuff out that wasn't even his. It's that's just awful. I mean, it's just someone that, you know, I I I hope at least they're like listening to your stuff and they just didn't erase your hard drive.
I suspect the latter, to be honest. I'd actually be, I'd be quite flattered if I suddenly heard one of those tunes be released. It'd probably cost more money to actually get it out than actually, you know, the amount of money you get back these days. But so it'd be free investment anyway, and I could always claim it. But yeah, no, I suspect it has genuinely been wiped and gone to music heaven. It is what it is. I have to be honest with you, I'm very matter of fact about it now, but you can imagine how upset I was at the time. I mean, I was beside myself, and actually my wife was even more upset than I was, and spent a lot of time trying to help me to find it, contacting various, you know, pubs and police departments and restaurants and all sorts of things to try and trace back whether or not I'd left it somewhere, and we had to give up on it. And then, you know, I just went out and bought myself another laptop and decided to try to rewrite some of the EPs that I was working on. Some sounded better, some sounded didn't quite, not quite as good. In fact, my last EP was called the Lost Tape EP, and those tracks were all the masters, my own masters of tracks which weren't completely finished. So normally I do a ref master of a track. It's a bit of a bad practice actually. You should always do a pre-master and a ref master. But I'm a bit lazy sometimes, and I like my tunes to sound big and fat, so I often send them to labels or whatever as ref masters, and then they'll say, "Oh, that's great, but can you send me the pre before you put the mastering plugins on?" And in this instance, I had the masters in the cloud, the ref masters, but I didn't have the original files or the pre's. So I had to actually release that EP with my own masters. But it was, you know, they're pretty close. My mastering's not too bad, but that was why that was called the Lost Tape EP. But yeah, it was a lesson learned. Back up your stuff, you know. So and you know, and don't just willy nilly take your laptop with your life on it out on the train. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Why have two laptops if you can
Well,
afford it?
my wife has a similar story. She teaches, and there was a TikTok craze uh, over here where you put a safety pin in the laptop and it makes the laptop pretty much blow up. Well, one little arsehole did that. My wife had left the laptop in class and there was a fire drill. When she came back, her audio face was cracked and she tried turning it on and it was gone. Yeah, some little bastard had done that, and my wife, she does her, she actually goes to Oxford University. She's the smart one of the family.
Wow.
She's doing her doctorate in sleep medicine. So she had a load of stuff, papers on that computer, and it just destroyed it. So, you know, kind of the same thing. Just your hard-earned work on a computer for some divvy to either steal it or break.
That was so actually there was a point where I thought it was quite funny actually. It's not funny, but you have to laugh at it after the event. I've got a few Macs, and I uh, I thought the Find My Mac service was working for the Mac that I lost, and I was on the train and I could see I did the Find My Mac thing, and I could see the little dot in this village. And I rang the missus up and said, "I think I found it." And I was going to go around to this house and knock on the door because I'd done it before. Actually, I lost a computer a while ago, and I ended up knocking on somebody's door. I actually I put my laptop in the rickshaw in town, you know, in the back where they go around on the bikes. and the guy, I forgot to take it out the back of the rickshaw, and he went home with it. And I drove all the way across to East London to go and collect it. And I could tell exactly which house it was in because I could see from Google Maps the roof that had the same color as the one I was looking at in front of me. So I knew exactly which house it was in. Knocks on the door, and the guy said, I said, "Is there a rickshaw driver here?" And he sort of looks at me a bit oddly, and I just could sense that he was lying. And he was like, I said, "I've lost my laptop." Well, no, there's no one here. And I thought, and I looked at my laptop, and I saw it disappear out the back of the house on the thing, on the Find My iPhone app. So I thought, right, I'm calling the police, and I called the police, and they just happened to be doing a kind of training exercise like 2 roads away in a van, all these kind of young police officers, and they turned up 10 minutes later, and which house is it? And I said, that one there. I told them the situation, and you should have seen the look on the guy's face when he opened the door, and there was like 5 police officers there. I was thinking, bloody hell, what is going on here? And I got a radio call in from them a few minutes later saying we found it. So I'd had that experience, and I thought I might have the same experience with this laptop, but I realised that I was actually tracking the laptop that I was actually on. So it was moving on the train, and I drove all the way there, opened up my laptop again, connected to the Wi-Fi, and it said it was right here, and I thought, well, it's right here. And then it twigged that I was tracking the laptop that I was actually on. So sadly, not to be, didn't get it back. And some idiot, yeah, like you say, wiped it and didn't realize that the blood, sweat, and tears that had been lost. So I was trying to explain it's like the equivalent of being a painter and having a room full of paintings and it just literally going up in flames. It was kind of akin to that, but I'm over it now.
Yeah, always put your tracker on your phone,
Yeah.
on your computer, even on yourself. I'd put trackers on my trainers.
I lose things every 2 minutes. The worst thing, bloody glasses. I'm losing glasses constantly. I just, I've got about 20 pairs. I still can never find them. Anyway.
That's because you don't have your glasses on.
Exactly. I'm like, was it Daphne and Scooby-Doo or something that used to take it off and then would be like that looking, and then there'd be a ghost behind them. Yeah, I'm like that basically.
So, mate, as we come to an end, your upcoming releases, obviously with Pappa, anything else in the pipes?
Yeah, we've got so Ranj and I have got another EP coming out soon as well. So we've been quite busy together. And actually, funnily enough, I met Ranj through a breeder competition for Huge. This was to remix The Chain and Twilight Thunder, and neither of us won it. Lee Jordan won it, and I ended up doing. Lee Jordan ended up remixing one of my tracks as well. But yeah, we've been working really well, Ranj and I, and we've got that EP that just came out, which did pretty well. We managed to get a number one in Electronica charts for one of the tunes there, and Chris from Forensic Records has been in touch because he loved one of the tracks, Just Breathe, that we did. So it just so happens Ranj and I were working on another EP and had 3-4 tracks ready. So Chris has snapped them up, and I don't know when they're coming out exactly, but I think they might showcase a few of them at Balance in Croatia. So that's quite exciting as well. So I'll be featuring on Forensic as well, which is nice.
Yeah. Chris is an absolute legend. I mean, everything he touches is brilliant. I love the sister label as well, 12 Point.
Yeah.
It's just cracking. I've had him on the podcast, and again, we've stayed mates. Even though he's a Newcastle fan, but we can't
Kind of everything.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I look forward to hearing the new music. Everybody, you can obviously go to Beatport, Juno, Spotify, but most importantly, I'll always say Bandcamp, because at least they give the artist more money than what the rest of them do. So it's fauxplay.bandcamp.com. And there's some freebies on there as well, which the Radiohead one is absolutely cracking. The Nude,
Nude remix, yeah.
man, you've
Um,
done that some justice.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, do you know what? I need to update Bandcamp because I've got a load of remixes and bootlegs and things that should go up there. I just did one actually, which a few people were buzzing off. What's that? Keep on pumping it up. Got to keep on pumping it up because I love it. The old classic. I can't remember who did it actually. About 1989, I think it was. I think it was. I think it featured Kylie at one point. But anyway, I did a bootleg of that, which people are buzzing off. So I'm going to stick some more things on there. So thank you very much, Darren. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk today. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure for me, mate. As I always say, I'm sure a lot of my, regular listeners kind of get tired of me saying this, but, please go out, search out new artists, but also search out older artists because you will find so many amazing records that aren't in the Beatport Top 100, that aren't on Juno's Top 100. You've got to search for stuff, and you might find an artist that came out with a record 20 years ago that you absolutely fall in love with now. So that's the biggest thing. I can just keep sharing music, new and old. As we live in a crazy world, and it is crazy because you turn on the telly and it just seems like, you know, horrible stories day after day. So please just take care of one another. Tell your family, your mates that you love them. Please like, subscribe, put your notifications on, and just quickly upcoming guests. It's just going from strength to strength. It's just I'm in dreamland for all my guests that have come on and told their story. But I've got Ultramarine, which I was a massive fan on, in the like late 80s, early 90s, put out some amazing ambient house albums. I've got Seamus Hadji, Defectives, big A&R man. Also Palm Skin Productions, who, if you know Trip Hop, you'll know he was on Mowax. So yeah, a lot of good amazing guests that come on, all that have been a part of my journey. So, yeah, keep listening. I thank you for listening and take care, and we'll see you next time.